to the Eclectic Collection, my lovely eclectors, and today's episode 112, Water Barter. Dun dun dun. What does that mean? Well, let's talk about the bad luck that I've had in the recent past, which has prohibited me from my lovely time with you. My basement, which is where my home office is, let's just say it's been raining a lot. And I have no recollection of any kind of water that I didn't want there in my basement since I was about 12. Well, I'm a lot more than 12, and all of a sudden, I have water in my basement. It was discovered by one of my minions going downstairs and saying, "There's water in the basement." To which I began to panic, and as I went down there to realize there was not quite a flood, but 6 or 7 parts that were at least 2 to 3 inches underwater, that got me nervous because a lot of my equipment lives down there. Luckily, no podcast elements were harmed in the making of this podcast, so everything was saved. Thank you, angels, for keeping that the way it was. But there was a lot of, I'll say in the service areas, just piles of tile that popped and things that went yucky and got water damaged and buckets and things. So a lot of it was probably trash anyway, but obviously trash I haven't gotten to, and of course nobody wants water. So my friend came to my rescue with like 3 or 4 other people and many of shop vac, wet vac, and we had 3 wet vacs going for like 4 hours. And it was, of course, a Saturday night because when else would bad things happen? And I would say from like 11 o'clock until probably 3 in the morning, all we did was just suck water into these horrible, bits and get everything taken care of out of the machines. And some were bigger, some were smaller, but they got gallons and gallons. And then I noticed we finally got through the water to the basement itself. After the tile pop, there was water still coming through, almost bleeding up out of the ground. And I thought, this cannot be good. So I assessed my problem, realizing that this could keep going on ad infinitum. And I just stuck the hoses on top of all the spots that kept billowing up water. And it did get less and less over time, but it was probably another hour. So I put out about 900 damp rid things, and I got probably 4 fans and put them out all over the place to try and pick up everything that we could. And it did suffice and stop the water coming in because luckily the rain stopped. So now I have this mess. And later on Monday, I call the insurance, and they say, "Oh, that's unfortunate because it wasn't a flood." And I said, "What do you mean it wasn't a flood?" And they said, "Oh, no, well, it's not like a tree crashed through your basement or there was an act of God where there was a flood and, Noah showed up. There's just no flood. That's just groundwater, and it comes up from underneath. So if it didn't pour in a window or a door, that's not a flood. Sorry, we don't cover that." Now, I love my insurance people. So I was talking to corporate, not so much in love with them, but I love my personal insurance people. So I called my personal insurance people, and I'm like, "Yo, help." And my awesome insurance person said, "You know what? No big deal. I'm going to give you the name of this company. Call them. They're a couple of really young, nice guys. They do this for a living. They'll be able to at least get rid of the water, dry the house out, and, they don't assess necessarily where it's coming from or how it got there, but it'll get you to the next step and get you okay for a couple of weeks. Hopefully it doesn't keep raining." So they're local to me, and I thought, well, let's do that and see what these people are all about. And they were super nice, awesome guys, called me back immediately, came by that night and said, "Hey, we're running really late. There's been a lot of rain in the area, but do you mind if we come at like 8, 9 o'clock? I said, "Nope, that's totally fine." And they showed up. He brought a whole crew of people, went down in the basement, walked around my property, gave me thoughts of where he thought it could be coming from. And he said, "I have to go to Philadelphia to pick up some other units, but I have these gigantic basically dehumidifiers that are way, way more intense than a home version. They were the industrial size." He said, "I'm going to put about 4 of these down here, and I'll come back over the weekend and pick them up. Are you okay with that?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "No, that would be cool. We'll do this, this, and this." Showed me exactly what he was going to do, where he's going to put stuff. "Can I plug in here?" "Sure you can." I said, "Should we run the fans?" He said, "Yeah." Closed off the 2 back doors to the service area, and that was that. As he came upstairs, I thought, okay, such a last-minute thing. It's raining. He's got tons of customers. He's already told me he's got other places to go. What's this going to cost me? I'm thinking every negative thing I can. And he said, "Oh, we're just so busy today. It's crazy. And I said, oh, I was told over by my friend Helene at the agency that you guys are really good. And he's like, oh, yeah, she's great. Love working with her. I said, I love Helene. I've been working with her for years. And he says to me, well, yeah, could you just do me a favor? And would you mind telling her that we came over right away and we got things taken care of for you? I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, I'm a teacher. People are so bad anymore and like complaining about bad things. I love to give kudos to people when they do a good job. And they looked really tired. And I said, can I get you guys a couple of waters or something? And I opened my fridge and I said, I have root beer. And the two of them lit up like a little kid on Christmas. And they were like, root beer? Really? I said, yeah, just root beer. Want some root beer? And he's like, yeah, we would love a can of root beer. So I gave them each a bottle of water and a can of root beer. And my goddaughter is like the cookie wench when it comes to Girl Scout cookies. So she and her two little sisters are just like, oh my God, I have Girl Scout cookies out the wazoo. So I had a bunch of Girl Scout cookies, whole boxes, sitting on my counter. And who doesn't love a Samoa? It will never be a caramel delight. Get over it. So I don't care that you change bakeries. That's ridiculous. So I said, do you like Thin Mints? Do you like Samoas? And they were both like, really? And I said, yeah. So I gave each of them a box. And the one guy said, my girlfriend really likes the peanut butter ones. I said, here you go. So I handed him another one. And at this point, I thought maybe this will soften, what I'm going to get asked for money-wise. A little ounce of kindness goes a long way, more with honey than vinegar. And he shook my hand and said, here's my card. I'll be back on Saturday to get these. Just tell Helene we came by fast, no charge. And I said, really? Did we just barter water basement removal for Girl Scout cookies and root beer? He said, yes, we did. There's still good people in the world. I said, I love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I said, not only did you drop everything and came right out here and took care of the problem, and they did. And it was, the machines were huge. There were no easy task to move. And although I do have an access door in my basement, which they did go in, when they originally brought the assessment tools down, they climbed, through the house and went all the way down the stairs, which I know was no small feat. And he said, could you just do me a favor and leave a review? I said, absolutely, which I put a glowing review up about a few days later, and I called my friend like I said I would. So there's still good people in the world. So as they get done their job, and luckily it hasn't been a problem since, I've been told repeatedly by family members and friends, you really still need to get that checked out. There could be water outside, in the ground, in the wall. I'm like, ugh. So thinking I was done with this, but I was not, I went out to make some phone calls and find people that would be better qualified, because I'm certainly not, to figure out the whole water crisis. As my luck would have it, my niece had a similar situation, as did my sister not that long ago, and they had used this other company. So they were like, hey, call up these people and, let's see what's going on. And I said, okay, fine. So they were super nice. I called and left a message. And, of course, it was over a weekend by the time everything got done. And by Monday, they called me back, told me I could come out at my convenience, and they'll send me a person, and they will have them assess the whole situation, and it's free estimate, we'll go from there. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, that was very true. They came out on Saturday a week later when I asked them to. The guy was super prompt. His name was Earl. And let's just say that about 3 hours later, I had a full schematic of my basement, what was going on, what was happening. And apparently I had a lot more water down there than they thought. It was literally coming through the ground, not the wall, which was a good thing. And it's an older house, so I had the potential of this happening more. And they showed me, he told me how we could kind of get through it. They dig like a little trench against the corner of the wall, and they put in this patented system of, basically it's like a fancy sump pump, and it takes everything out. I already have one down there, but it would like meet with mine. So old tech meets new tech, and they would make sure that everything was working. They could get everything done in a day or two. And, we just needed to schedule if I was interested. So he showed me everything and answered millions of questions that I asked him. And I found Earl to be very personable, and we kind of clicked on a lot of, I'll say, Cliff Clavinisms, because, my sister calls me Cliff on purpose, just in the sense that there's always something silly or trivial or pop culture that I reference or know, and he seemed to be a guy like that. So I had some stuff sitting in front of me, tablets, things, a list to do, my cell phone, and amongst it was a little stack of Heath bars, because my sister likes Heath bars, so whenever I go out, I grab a Heath bar for her. Well, there were two sitting there. and he was eyeing up his Heath bar. And I was like, "You like Heath bars?" He's like, "I love Heath bars." I said, "Well, if the price goes down, you can have this Heath bar." So I'm teasing, but I'm not. And then I proceed to tell Earl about the really great guys that came in and worked literally for Girl Scout cookies and root beer. He goes, "Wow, that's really nice." So I said, "I'm just saying, no pressure. You can have this Heath bar, but it comes with some hints." So Teehee, we laughed about it, and he went and wrote everything up and figured everything out. And I will say that Heath bar helped, because I did end up with a significant discount for handing over that Heath bar, and because he was able to know what he was doing and figure out the pieces that we absolutely had to do versus some options of things. And he was honest, and that's all I could ask for. So his company, by the way, is Groundworks, which is like national, I think minus 3 states. Seriously, what are you doing in the Midwest? Like, sign up with Groundworks. Everybody else did. So hopefully we can drop a link to them so you can check them out, because they are extremely on-time, polite, clueful people that know what they're talking about. And I haven't found any issue, knock wood. So I get crazy when people break appointments. I get crazy when people lie to me. I get crazy when work is not done correctly or well, or within a remote time frame. Not to say that things don't come up. I get that. But so far, so good. Everything's been awesome, and the work has been scheduled to move forward later on in a month or two, because there are that many people that needed help with this. It was quite the wet season of spring, and I just felt comfortable from the whole beginning with that. So really, honestly, kudos, shout out to everybody that's a service person who does their job correctly, efficiently, honestly, and well, because it will come back to you tenfold. Sometimes it might not feel like that. And I say this from not just a teaching position where people always complain when it's the bad thing, but never quite say thanks when it's good. And from, the corporate world where you're doing somebody's event, if the tiniest little thing goes wrong, they tend to blame the wrong person. If food comes out of the kitchen incorrectly, the waiter gets screamed at, but it's really the chef's fault. So a lot of that happens. Always be nice, be kind, listen, more with honey than vinegar, and give compliments when they're due. I mean, people just don't say thank you enough, and they just expect things. And, it's just that time where, again, post-vid, it's like rules don't apply anymore. No, because why just go back to a normal country where everybody pretty much got along, things weren't crazy, and prices weren't so through the roof, or in this case, through the basement. So I think everybody just needs to chill out and eat some fruit or something. And for that, you can go back a couple episodes and listen to my kitchen life hacks podcast. But just throwing that out there. Anyhow, it's just a situation where people aren't saying nice things as much as they should. And it's like our inclination is to find the negative, look for the hole in the donut, and be sad about things or be grumpy about things, or I can't believe that, or this didn't happen the way. And I get it, and that happens a lot. And sadly, work ethics are going down the toilet. Well, be amongst the change to make people want to do better, compliment them for doing better, and encourage the being on time, being polite, being consistent, being communicative, and hopefully it'll go a long way. I know it did for me, certainly with Heath bars and Girl Scout cookies and root beer. So maybe you should keep those items in your house. I'm not sure. But give Groundworks a call if you do have any basement issues. They're nationwide, but I'm in the Northeast corridor, so Philadelphia area. And maybe you can talk to Earl and get everything squared away in your house. And see, Earl, I told you, the Heath bar was going to pay off. At least I hope it does. All right. If you liked what you heard, then check out eclecticcollectionpodcast.com or listen to us on your preferred platform. I'm Terry Tenaglia. Thanks for listening.